new hot and techy Brezza, the Citybird SUV.
Match number 9 is Rajasthan Royals against Delhi Capitals. Delhi searching for their first win. The Royals hoping to make it 2 wins out of 2. On Maruti Suzuki Arena presents ESPNcricinfo Timeout. We're joined by Tom Moody and Mitchell McClenaghan to build up to that one. Gentlemen, thank you for your time. Delhi, they've lost that opening game, but they have Anrik Nortje coming back. He's not played for a while. The first question, obviously, Tom, has to be Nortje coming in. How does that lineup change from what we saw in the first game?
Yeah, well, he's an obvious in, isn't he? So I think one of the batters will have to make way, and I think Shai Hope would be the one. He was lined up at number 3. He had a reasonable start, but you've got to go with Nortje, an impact bowler, bowls 150, and has got a good history in the IPL.
Before we think of who replaces Hope then in the batting, question to you, Mitch, would be Nortje returning after a while. He's played a handful of games in South Africa, but not had a lot of cricket for a long time. Coming straight into this environment, how do you expect him to rock up?
I think he'll be fine. He's one of the more professional cricketers going around in world cricket at the moment. He never leaves a stone unturned. He's the ultimate professional, and his success in the IPL has been pretty good in recent times. When I look at his numbers, I look at his strike rate. And his strike rate 17, which means he's almost taking 1.5 wickets a game. And to me, that's significant. He's a strike bowler. I don't mind the economy, 8.2. He's an aggressive bowler. Some games he's going to go around the park, but what he does is he changes games.
In Nortje's absence, Delhi placed their bets on their overseas batters. Now, if they are to remove Shai Hope, who comes in? In the previous game, Tom, it needed a batter coming in as an impact sub in the first innings itself, when they drafted Abhishek Porel in. That made a difference to their batting effort. If Shai Hope goes out of this side, you see Abhishek Porel slotting in?
Well, given he's in red-hot form, he showed some really good form. You would think that he'd be the obvious choice, but they may go to Prithvi Shaw, given that it's a top-order batter they're looking at, and they may move Mitch Marsh to number 3, so Prithvi Shaw might find himself at the top with Warner again.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I think the only other thing they would consider is moving Rishabh up in that lineup, but I think it's too early for him in his comeback to T20 cricket for Delhi and in the IPL for him to slot up a spot in that lineup.
Right. Turning our attention to Rajasthan Royals, they caught everyone's eye by getting the impact sub right, which is something they didn't necessarily manage through 2023. Tom, it worked out quite perfectly in Game 1. They went in with 6 batters and 5 bowlers, had the provision of a Robman Powell if they were to have a collapse, eventually got an Andre Berger in. What happens if they bowl first, though? How do you expect them to line up and build their team if they are bowling first?
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting dilemma for them. I think they have to name their 4 overseas players, if that's the case, and then look at their most effective and informed domestic player to come in when they bat second. But to me, they have to list all 4, otherwise it throws their balance.
But what do you do to that bowling mix? If you are playing all 4, so you have Andre Berger in this 11, does that mean you're starting with 6 bowlers, which is what they went in their bowling innings, or are you removing one of the Indian bowlers to that starting lineup?
Yeah, I think, unfortunately for Sandeep Sharma, how good he was in that last game, he's probably the man who would miss out. I'd be confident going into that second innings and bowling first and only having the 5 bowlers. I think the 5 bowlers that they've got, Berger, Bolt, Avesh Khan, Uzi and Ashwin, I think they're top-class bowlers. I know quite often, Tom, and you'll have a point on this, that sometimes you want the insurance of someone else to come in T20, particularly with the impact player. But I think they've got proper quality in their bowling lineup and they'll be fine. Hard luck for Sandeep, but we know now from a Rajasthan Royals point of view that he can come in and do the job.
Yeah, I think if it all goes pear-shaped and they're needing Sandeep, they used him in a very specific role in that first game, and that was at the death. He bowled brilliantly. I think he got 1 for 22 off 3 overs and played a critical role. And so if it is a run feast and one of their bowlers is not really having a day out, they can make the impact sub at that point and bring him into the contest for the back 10 overs if that's the way it's trending. Otherwise, I think that's unfortunately going to be the casualty.
All right. always interesting to see how Rajasthan figure their impact options out. We'll keep an eye out on that one. Focusing on Rajasthan's batting, Game 1 saw Sanju Samson do Sanju Samson things. It's one of the more curious case studies in the IPL. Sanju Samson over the last 5 years has always scored at least a 50 in the opening game, but then somehow that form at times tapers off. He doesn't have a single 500-run season to his name yet in his IPL history. What explains this pattern, Tom?
I think to be honest with you, I think it's a lot to do with captaincy. It's a huge burden on anyone. Carrying the weight of the captaincy of a franchise, the pressure that comes with that, let alone the pressure of being a pure batter at the top of the order that keeps wicket. So he's got 3 considerable roles in the team. And I was sort of thinking about this, leading into this game and thinking, well, what is it with Sanju Samson? Why don't we see him sort of, marry up that consistency as as that graphic showed? And it has to be sort of a mental fatigue. It's not a technical thing. It's not a physical thing. He's strong. He's got a great technique. It has to be mental fatigue, which can come from the overbearing responsibility of being a captain.
Yeah, and I think probably a point on that, and not knowing what's happened at Rajasthan within their camp over the last little while, but you touched on the mental fatigue for a skipper. If you want to get the best out of Sanju Samson this year, you look at his schedule, everything you're asking him to do that's not directly involved in performing with the game, and you take that out. Any shoots, any promos, anything that's going to fatigue him physically and mentally throughout the season, if you think he's your number 1 player, your X factor and who's going to win you an IPL, you've just got to strip all of that back.
Alternately, just tell him every time it's the first game of the season. Approach it that way.
Well, you could do that, but I don't think his body will be telling him that.
And I think Kumar Sangakkara is making a little more pointed observations to Sanju Samson than what I suggested. And it's something Samson brought up in the post-match after Lucknow. He said, and I quote, "This time I've been given a different kind of role. Sangha has given me some suggestions and I'm trying my best to follow it. I've been playing the IPL for 10 seasons. With that experience, I feel like I need to give myself some time to understand the conditions and then calculate my approach from there." That automatically, Mitch, points to a newfound approach for Samson, who at times has been questioned for perhaps going too hard at the start of innings.
Yeah, I think if Sanga's coming to you and saying that that's his observation, then they've obviously combed through and picked through everything that's happened in previous seasons. One thing you don't want to take away from Sanju Samson is his explosiveness, and he can really put you under some serious pressure. You've got to look back and go, well, was it errors of judgment or was it just poor execution? So if it was just poor execution, then you can kind of say, well, we'll go about it the same way. But if he was making poor decisions in those games, then yes, it is the right thing to turn around and say, maybe we need to take a different approach.
Yeah, I think that statement there screams to me risk assessment. Just as the season unfolds, just be a little bit smarter around when you're taking your risks.
Which way will Sanju Samson go then? Can he buck this trend that has chased him for the last 5 seasons? We'll find out. If he does, it could play a huge role in Rajasthan getting a second win. And if they do that, that will be 2 wins in Jaipur, already 1 more than they managed throughout 2023. Build up to the game starts at 6:55 p.m. IST. Be sure to join us then on Maruti Suzuki Arena presents ESPNcricinfo Timeout.
All new hot and techy Brezza, the city bred SUV.